What's going on, everyone? 96% of stocks in the S&P 500 closed down in the red today as the floor is giving out. And not only are U.S. stocks falling through the floor, but just markets all around the world are struggling quite a bit as Japan had their worst day since 1987, and even South Korea had such a bad day that they halted selling altogether. And we're not too far away from that in the US markets when it comes to circuit breakers by themselves. And we'll talk more about that as the video goes on. But we have a lot to talk about today, especially considering the topic of what caused this recent sell-off, some important things to pay attention to for tomorrow and the rest of the week, and some great setups to pay very close attention to during this market environment. Volatility, like we're seeing now, presents opportunities that calm markets can't even dream of presenting. So there's gonna be a lot of great setups, a lot of opportunities over these next couple days, and it's definitely gonna be a short-term trader's paradise. So besides that, Tom, let's get right into today's episode. We have a ton to cover.
Yeah, we do. So the SPY, first things first, we gapped down pretty hard this morning. A lot of people saw this coming as futures were looking pretty bad last night. And, whenever the SPY opened up for pre-market, it ended up tanking down quite a bit. It backed down to like that 509 to 510 support. It is holding pretty steady intraday, but whenever the SPY closes down 2.9%, that's pretty rough. And Mike, we've talked about potential pullbacks coming in for quite a while now, and I still can't believe that number you mentioned with $1 trillion being wiped out of the market as these big tech stocks fall like Nvidia, Apple, Microsoft, and others. Looking at the heat map today, I don't think I've ever seen one this red, Mike. Maybe some of those bad days during COVID, it was something like this. But, man, this is quite the sell-off. And there's so much going on. And I know that the Japan situation is super important for this sell-off as well.
Oh yeah, and don't worry guys, we're going to talk about that pretty deeply in just a second, but before we get onto that topic, Tom, as you mentioned, everything is selling off. Not just all types of industries, but just everything. Even Bitcoin is breaking lower right now as that's below like the $55,000 mark. At the same time, oil selling off, gold is selling off, silver is selling, everything is selling. And this all has to do with this nasty situation going on with the Japanese carry trade. So this can get as complex as you would like it to get, but to summarize in a nice and easy way, basically, Japan is a place where interest rates are basically zero, and it has been this way for a while. So what a lot of very rich people like to do is they like to take out loans using Japanese currency because the interest rate is, again, basically zero. They then take that money and invest it elsewhere, whether it be in maybe US debt, maybe stocks, or wherever else they choose. The problem now is that Japan started to increase their interest rates in a way that wasn't exactly expected. So all these super rich corporations and investors are all panicking at once saying, holy shit, what did we buy? And they're all rushing to the exit all at once, and this is causing a big sell-off in all areas of the market. This Japanese carry trade is a massive trade done all over the world and on a massive scale. And if that isn't made evident enough just by looking at today's heat map, then I don't know what can demonstrate how significant this style of trade is. The main thing you need to know is that there is a lot of panic going on in a major way. Another great way to demonstrate this point is if we go to the volatility index or the VIX and we go to, let's say, a max weekly chart, we can see that today the VIX hit highs of around 65. There are only two other times in recent history where it has gotten to this level. The first time being during the COVID crash, which, as we all know, was not necessarily a great experience for many people out there. And the other time was during the Great Recession of 2009. Yes, we are at those levels. So, what's happening in the market right now is truly historic and it's truly crazy. And the more panic and selling pressure that we continue to see, just the worse it'll get. At the same time, when you have periods of high volatility, you do see big moves in both directions. Just like we saw during the COVID crash, Tom. Yes, there were many brutal bearish days, but there were many extremely powerful bullish days as well. So one very important thing for everyone to keep in mind over these next couple days is you have to be willing to adapt quickly and understand we're about to see some giant moves in both directions.
Yeah, exactly. Some of those moves, Mike, were pretty volatile during the COVID crash, and we're like in that type of mode, right? From the high on the SPX to where we are now, it's down around 8.5%, and at the lows today, oh, it wasn't quite 10%. I was going to say, Mike, we're almost to that correction point. That would have made a good headline, but I'm sure we would have seen that everywhere by now. But nonetheless, it's a pretty bad day out there, right? And this is actually spilling over into everything. You go look at US 10Y, you go and you look at the yields even. They even fell off again this morning quite a bit, right? US 10Y got all the way down to like 3.67%, under that 3.7% mark after recently just falling under 4%. So we're seeing a massive sell-off there, and we're starting to see the markets flush because of that, and it's just it's a weird time, Mike, and this is also all coming right as we're snowballing into all this bad Middle East stuff coming out with Israel and Iran as well.
And that's a whole nother thing, Tom. That's just a whole nother thing to be worried about. And speaking a little bit more about that, there are a handful of different sources out there kind of expecting an attack from Iran as soon as tonight. But of course, no one truly knows besides Iran. But, if we do see a wide-scale attack and just tensions rising in the Middle East, it doesn't help the global situation either. And that could only further add to this brutal selling pressure. So that's just a whole nother thing to keep close on watch. And specifically for this news, keep a close eye on oil. Oil surprisingly has been very muted over these past couple days, but if we do see a truly, I guess you could say, wide-scale attack, that can shift things for oil. So when it comes to crude oil futures, you could watch that, but even like other stocks like ExxonMobil, OXY, maybe Chevron, and any oil or energy-related company.
Yeah, and if you're looking for like an ETF, like something like GUSH could be pretty good as like a nice leveraged ETF, if oil does move, could be good in the short term. But I personally like the oil stocks you mentioned, Mike, like Oxy and others. And, if that starts to happen, I think even gold and silver will be a big thing to look at, because what do people like to get into whenever there's fears of war? It's usually those, the gold, the silver, the oil, stuff like that. It's especially those commodities like gold, which people consider like safe haven assets, will be pretty good in the short term, Mike. And I know gold's actually been selling off the past couple days, which kind of surprised me, right? But I guess nothing almost can escape the selling pressure that we've been seeing.
True. And as we look at the market overall, not only do we have the rising tensions in the Middle East and the massive carry trade disaster, but we also just have market sentiment changing in a way that certainly is not too good to see. We have a lot of traders, I guess you could say, reassessing the valuations of many different stocks out there, and some traders are even expecting an emergency rate cut from the Fed. And again, this just adds to that like snowball effect of just negative sentiment and just fear and worry. And as we've seen many times in the past, the stock market likes to take the stairs up and the elevator down. And I think it's no surprise that as we look at the heat map, that we have this level of selling pressure all coming in at once. And we're going to talk more about this in just a second, but to further add to the volatility even more, if you could picture that, we still have a pretty exciting earnings lineup as well. And while most of the big tech stocks have already reported, there's a handful of I guess you could say stocks that many people watch that are set to report, not even just today, but over the rest of the week.
Yeah, today Palantir reported that's pretty popular. Tomorrow and after hours, we're going to have SMCI, Rivian, Airbnb. Those are three pretty popular stocks. And then Wednesday, we're going to have Robinhood, Shopify, Disney. Thursday, SoundHound, Unity, Eli Lilly, and Plug. Even some marijuana stocks like CGC on Friday there. So it's going to be a very big week for the earnings. I know Palantir reported tonight. They've actually been pushing up very well in after hours, which is going to make Palantir shareholders extremely happy right now, especially considering all the selling that we've been seeing. So with them moving up, that's a good sign, and hopefully SMCI can follow that tomorrow. But I don't know, Mike. We'll have to see with SMCI. These big tech stocks have been pretty iffy on the earnings lately.
Yeah, Palantir had a pretty good report today, and they beat their revenue and profit expectations. They grew their revenue 27% year over year. They raised their guidance, and overall, they had a pretty solid report. So as a long-term shareholder of Palantir, I love to see this, and if they do fall at some point in the future, I would definitely be pretty excited to scoop up some more shares.
Yeah, looking at the daily chart here, I mean, I know that they're up a lot in after hours, which is good. You know, they're coming back towards those recent highs, actually, up around like $29 to $30. I've been looking at Palantir a lot over the past few weeks as it's been dipping, and I'm sure a few people have been looking to buy the dip out there ahead of earnings, and I know that might be a little risky, but, you know, if you're looking at them for the long term, it might not be the worst thing to do. Palantir is a pretty big growth stock, and the thing I do like about them, they are pretty correlated to SPY, but, you know, they do have a bit more of a mind of their own, especially with earnings right here in the short term.
No doubt. And then for this week's economic schedule, it is pretty free and clear, which is super great to see because that'll really just let us trade the price action as it progresses rather than having to sit there and wait for, you could say, a major Powell speech or inflation data report or anything like that. So that is awesome to see. And with that being said, Tom, as we look a little bit deeper at SPY, like you mentioned earlier in the video, it held up in a fine way today, but I'm sure many people are still at least a little bit skeptical of this price action. So let us know the key levels for both directions.
Yeah, in the short term here, 509 and 510 is a major support to watch. It's pretty much like the low from pre-market this morning, which did actually get down to 508. So I'm really going to watch that as major support for tomorrow. If we start to run under there, if we gap down and open up below there, I think it'll be a pretty worrying sign. I think that today the market just got bought up because of how low it got in pre-market, right? It was almost too low, if that makes sense. But I feel like for the next couple of days, that volatility could definitely stick around. If we do see a pop back, I like 522.80 as a pretty good resistance here in the short term, as well as 525 and then at 530 overhead. That's a pretty good recent low. Now, as far as support, Mike, this is going to get kind of wild because we got to go so far back on the chart. We're actually wiping out a lot of the gains from the year right now. We're all the way back to levels from March and April. So underneath this 508 support, I'm mainly watching 504 and then 500 and 496 to the downside. 496 is a huge support to watch. That's right where a big recent low was.
And Tom, on one other note, I wasn't expecting to have to talk about this anytime soon, but when you have a VIX running like it is, I can't help but not talk about it. And that's our some circuit breakers coming up for the S&P 500. So for those of you who don't know, if the stock market falls too much too quickly, trading will be halted. So again, I just want to throw this out there so everyone can be prepared ahead of time. If the stock market falls by 7%, trading will be halted for 15 minutes. If after that point it falls, by a total of 13%, we will see another halt for 15 minutes. And while I hope this doesn't happen, but if the stock market falls by 20% in one day, trading will be halted for the rest of the day. So we haven't seen a circuit breaker in a long time, but I remember, Tom, during the COVID crash from a couple years ago, there were a whole bunch of them, and normally when they do happen, they tend to cluster quite a bit.
Yeah, they do. It gets pretty interesting when they happen as well. Whenever trading stops on these huge things like the SPY and everything, it's a big deal, guys. I mean, you'll see a lot of a lot of insanity out there, and then they'll open up and you'll see a lot of insane movement. And today, what was the market down, Mike? I think we totaled like 4.6% at lows. It wasn't quite to 7%, but it was getting close. So it would be pretty scary to have that happen on SPY in the short term, especially with the year that we've had. But like we've been saying, Mike, if we keep scrolling out on the charts and we look back, there's still more room down, like on a charting standpoint, in my opinion. So just keep that in mind. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we did end up hitting one, especially if something popped off like in the Middle East, right? Something like really bad starts to happen with Israel or something. I think we could see a pretty bad move.
No doubt. All right, well, let's get right into the good stuff then, which are some setups for tomorrow. A stock I'm watching very closely is Netflix, and it is to the downside. You guys are probably getting sick of this one because I've been talking about it so much over these past couple weeks, but it has just been moving in such a great way where I'm still going to keep it on radar. So basically looking at Netflix, every single time this stock has tried to run up over the past couple of weeks, it has gotten rejected right back down. Today it fell by over 2%. The price action was pretty good. The stock is still overextended on the daily chart, and just the selling pressure with this one has been really great. And when it does move to the downside in a truly momentum-filled way, it could have some really great moves, not just in terms of the stock, but also its options. So either way, Netflix is on my downside radar for tomorrow.
Yeah, and today was kind of weird, right? Like, the market opened up and we saw actually some bullish price action from open, but the overall movement today was pretty rough, obviously, as we can see on the heat map, with all these big tech stocks falling. And my first stock that I have to look at is SQQQ. I called this out yesterday, and I'm going to keep looking at it for tomorrow. And I wanted to mention that about the market being a little weird today because, there wasn't really any good downside opportunities once the market opened, which I thought was kind of, I think a lot of traders are kind of upset, or maybe they don't agree with maybe not necessarily being able to trade options before the market opens in the morning. I think that makes a lot of people pretty upset, but SQQQ will be good tomorrow if we do see a continued sell-off or another flush, and I'm really just watching for those big supports to give out on the SPY and the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ, or QQQ, is sitting right at 420, so if that ends up breaking, we'll be watching it down, and SQQQ will be a nice stock to play up if that happens.
All right, sounds good. Another stock I'm watching pretty closely is AMD, and it's actually to the upside. So this is pretty cool, Tom, but when you go to the heat map, you'll notice there's basically one stock that sticks out like a sore thumb, and that is AMD. It's up just under 2% today, and it has showed more strength today compared to like almost all other like big tech-related stocks, and that strength is something that is worth observing going into tomorrow and the rest of the week, because AMD is one of those stocks that sold off so much like over the past couple of weeks, where now that we're seeing a broader sell-off with the rest of the market, AMD's like, well, I'm already pretty overextended to the downside, and a lot of shorts are so much more eager to cover on AMD, kind of making like for an imbalance of supply and demand. Basically, AMD is on my radar to the upside for tomorrow, because in the event we see a strong move up and a lot of buying pressure flow in, I want to make sure that there's a stock that is already showing some relative strength on watch. So either way, AMD is on my upside radar.
Yeah, it's not bad. You're right. It's the one stock on the heat map today that really catches my eye. I see Booking down there, Booking Holdings still up like 1.66%. But other than that, it's kind of hard to find some green on this heat map. It's one of the weirdest days that we've seen in a while. But with my first play, or next play, I should say, I'm looking at Tesla. And I talked about this one yesterday, and it's down at a key level right now, which is $200 even. It actually gave out here yesterday, and it came back. It still ended up closing down 4% though. So for tomorrow, I'm looking for a good rejection around this 200 mark and another drop. If we start to fall underneath like 198, I'll be looking for a nice test of 195, 190, and then continue to watch it down. Here's a lot of levels on the book map. 195 is what I saw towards the end of day today as being a pretty nice support, along with 190 and 185, like I mentioned before. So those are kind of what I'm looking at tomorrow on Tesla if it keeps rejecting under 200. But I thought that it getting under 200 and failing to get out and really break back above it was a pretty bad sign today.
There we go. Well, it's now about that time for today's momentum plays. And with the first one, we have ExxonMobil to the upside.
Yeah, Zom was actually pretty flat and choppy today, but with all this Middle East stuff going on, if they end up breaking back above 116.50 resistance, watch them back up for tomorrow. That could be pretty fun.
All right, with the next one, we have MasterCard to the downside.
Yeah, MA, the banks, the credit card companies, all taking hits in the short term. If they end up falling under 440, then keep watching them down.
Okay, and then with the last one, we have Intel for both directions.
INTC. Mike, I saw that the CEO of Intel had to put a prayer out on Twitter today. I honestly could not believe that I witnessed that. But if Intel ends up breaking back above 21, then watch him back up. I think Intel's getting so low that some shorts might start covering here in the short term. If they end up falling back under 20, though, and re-breaking 1980, then watch him back down. That would be a nice support.
You know the situation is bad when you see a company you invest in, CEO, putting a prayer on Twitter. That is crazy. Okay, that's definitely one for the history books. But okay, so we have both levels with Intel. We have the upside level and the downside level. Don't forget about MasterCard and ExxonMobil as well. But either way, these three stocks are on watch for potential day trades tomorrow, if and only if they break through the levels Tom listed. The stronger and more consistent these stocks move, the better the setups ultimately become. If they don't break the levels listed, then don't force these trades. But Tom, we are now all clear for today's $763,000 big money trade, and we are looking at ticker symbol SNAP, SNAP. So basically, Snapchat took quite the drop over the past couple weeks, and the big money is bullish on them. Specifically, the big money bought the 7 strike call options for October 18th of 2024. Snapchat is coming to a multi-year major support level right around $8 a share. Again, this stock recently fell quite a bit over the past couple weeks, and while this drop is definitely significant, there is also a lot of support coming up as well. So if you're someone who really prioritizes, I guess you could say a safer entry, you might want to wait until it gets closer to that $8 support. But either way, the big money is entering now, and it's definitely an interesting setup.
It is, and whenever you see the daily chart on Snap, I mean, it's like there's so much volatility on Snapchat, it's insane. That support that you're mentioning is huge. It's hard to even put it on the chart because of how much Snapchat has fallen. You know, it keeps like snapping really weirdly on the chart, but that lower support down there is huge, Mike, and I actually like that quite a bit. Now, this is a play for October, so I guess, you know, you can't let it chop around too much down here, but I think that over like the next month, like heading into September, we could probably see a bit of a bounce back, you know, some shorts covering and etc. And also, Snap isn't like highly correlated to the SPY, just moderately. So that's one thing, you know, it obviously moves with a more of a mind of its own, as we like to say. And you can definitely tell that by the price action over the past year or so.
No doubt. So keep a close eye on Snapchat over these next couple of weeks. While Snapchat probably won't, you could say 200% overnight, like that JP Morgan trade from last week, or even like the KKR trade from last week. You know, big money plays normally do take time, but even though a handful of them have just been on fire lately, let's remember to continue to practice smart trading habits. But, you know, as we look at everything, it is a phenomenal time to be a trader. There is true craziness going on in the market right now, and it is not going to slow down anytime soon for multiple reasons. Of course, we can look at these major events going on, like everything in the Middle East, or even this carry trade, or even the upcoming election, or honestly anything that you choose to pick. It's pretty big right now, and it's crazy, and volatility tends to cluster. To go back to the VIX example, this type of market volatility is not something that we see often. Again, the two comparable examples that we are looking at right now are the COVID crash and the Great Recession of 2009. That should tell you all you have to know. A lot of opportunities will come. I know today was a little bit choppy from open, but just keep yourself calm and collected. Trade in a smart way. Focus on following grade A setups. Follow the money. Protect yourself in the event a trade does not go in your direction. Make sure that loss is as small as possible, and that's done by just planning out your trade and, plotting your stop loss at a level that you'd be comfortable with, and of course, aligning it with key important levels on the stock. But, I guess you could say market environments like this are market environments that many traders dream of. So I hope you guys are as excited as we are. There's a lot of craziness going on. If you are new to the channel, consider demolishing that subscribe button to see our videos more often. In every single video, we talk about multi-million-dollar big money trades, the most important news you need to know, setups and predictions for the next day, and we just cover everything you have to know in usually 20 to 25 minutes or less. But we are super excited. Before we close out, we want to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, Nightfalls in the Stocked Up trading floor. He said, awesome play with the big money. He said, love this community and Discord group. Thank you, Mike and Tom. And showed his nice profits from that KKR big money trade. So awesome job there, and huge shout out to you, Nightfalls. If you guys want in on the Stocked Up trading floor, check out that first link in the description in the comments down below. You get access to all these big money trades on the same day the trade is made, as well as our custom day trading bots. You can chat with Tom and myself all day long, and you can even join our exclusive live Q&A events every single Wednesday, plus access all of the past recordings. And it's the place to be if you're into short-term trading. Besides that, thank you all so much for watching, and let's have an amazing week in the market.